part one of the Sport Club Administrative Tracker. Today we are going to be working with the Sport Club Practice Form, and this is a great form for us on the first go around because it's fairly straightforward. There's not a lot of nuances to it, but I am going to cover pretty much everything from A to Z regarding our Sport Club practices, how we want to input that, and what tracking this should look like and why it's important. So, first part. Really want to work with our clubs at the beginning of each semester to make sure that they are putting all of their practices on BullSync. For our on-campus clubs, it makes it a little bit easier. We should have that information and can help them assist with putting those practices in. For our off-campus clubs, a little more challenging, and we do want to have that great relationship with those clubs to make sure that we are knowing when those practices are occurring, following up with them after they occur, and making sure we're really swiping people in. This year, we will be implementing a piece where every club should have a swiper. They are going to be checked out at the beginning of the year, so there really is no reason anymore for us not to be tracking attendance at any event or any club function, whether they are on or off campus. So with that said, it's important to remember the different levels at the end of the year and why this matters. So for us, for the classification matrix, we have our recreation instructional clubs, which need to have 10 active members, and we measure that through event attendance and practice attendance. They also need to have at least 7 practices. So really their goal should be to have at least 10 members at least 7 practices. Now, if they go above and beyond that, that's perfectly great. But for our recreation instructional clubs, that is the minimum that they have to meet to avoid being deactivated. And if they do not meet that, they will be deactivated. For our moderate competition, we have 18 practices, so obviously that number jumps up quite significantly with a minimum active membership of 12 people. So this is important to know that there is a larger requirement, so we really want to make sure we're working with those clubs to hit that, because at the end of the year, if they do not, while they will not be deactivated, they will go down to recreational instructional, and that will affect their funding. The last high competition is a whopping 28 practices. Now, the whole point of this is, as an escalating piece, those clubs really should be active. And we also up that membership requirement to 15 people. So once more, for those high competition clubs, we really want to stay on top of them to make sure that they are putting in their practices every time. So now going back to our Google Sheet here, we have our Sport Club practice form. And you'll see there's a couple of notes on here. One, practices will only count if they've been recorded through BullSync, so we don't want people just turning in random sheets of paper. The second piece is, if they're not swiping in, something happens to their swiper, or maybe someone forgot to bring a laptop for the event, that's perfectly fine starting off, and we will eventually transition away to shunning them for this. But we really want to make sure that we are still getting those practices recorded within 2 weeks of the actual practice date. So if after 10 business days they do not have a practice recorded and a club wants to go in and fill in 4 practices past that point in time, we will not allow them, and that will not count towards their overall matrix score. So make sure we're communicating this with the club, and as your club advisor, you really should be working with them after each practice to see, hey, what happened with your swipe-ins, or great job, we got it recorded, and put it in the tracker. So, as I mentioned before, so we have the Sport Club practice form, fairly straightforward. Most of our forms are going to look like this. There's going to be a variance in what information gets put in there, but I'm going to take you through the simple steps now of what this looks like. So, you'll see on the far left, we have the club drop-down menu. We're going to start with the badminton practice, just for samples. Click on the practice date, whatever that may be. So let's say today is the 20th, so we'll say this practice occurred last night. So you're going to put in 6/19/19, location. This is really more so important for our off-campus clubs, just so we have an idea of where they are. But for consistency purposes, it is going to be nice to have this for all of our clubs. So we're going to put that they practice in the North Gym here. Attendance. So as I mentioned before, the minimum active membership, 10, 12, 15. So saying our badminton needs to at least get that 12. We'll put them there. Input by. So this is where you will be. So since I'm doing this today, we'll put this here. Input date. So we will say today is the 20th. And this is really the way of us knowing that who did this, when they did it, and kind of create that consistency and accountability. So now, if you need to track to see where your club is at, especially later on in the year, you will see over here we have this very nice summary sheet. So on this, you can see that badminton had one practice, average attendance of 12. Okay, so if I was to go over here and add another badminton practice, let's say that they practice tonight, and we know in the future they're going to have this many people. Let's say they have 15, and this is going to be once more input by me, and we will put another 620 over here. And now you'll see that badminton has two practices with an average attendance of 13.5. So that's a very good way to see where we're at. It helps you stay organized with your clubs. And then to the far right, we have another drop down. And this is another good way to see every single time that your club has practiced, when they practice, if there's ever discrepancy. So as you can imagine, if we're putting in 40 practices over here, for every club, or a practice for every club, and we have 28 requirements, this page is going to get quite long, and the sheet is made to handle that. However, to make your life easy and to sort it out if there's ever a discrepancy, what I can do is click on badminton. You'll see from the drop down, I know now that badminton practiced on the 19th, the 20th, and the location was the North Gym, and we had 12 attendees and 15 attendees. So we have a very good reference point here of when they practice, how many people showed up. So if there's ever a discrepancy, what we will do is go to this, and then if we have to, we can always go back and sort to figure out who put that in, what the input date was, and if we are missing certain inputs and the club sees a discrepancy.